There was a time when buying clothes wasn't a gamble. You walked into a store, found your size, paid a fair price, and trusted that what you brought home would still look like itself 2 years later. That wasn't a luxury. That was just how things worked. A good polo shirt lasted 5, 6, 7 years. A well-made sweater survived more winters than you can remember. A pair of khakis got broken in and became the pair you reached for automatically, every single time, without thinking. Many of us grew up believing that's what clothing was supposed to do. Not impress anyone, not make a statement, just hold up. So here's the question that inspired today's ranking. Which American clothing brands still actually do that? And which ones are simply living off the reputation they built 20 or 30 years ago, hoping you won't notice that the quality quietly left? We looked at 13 brands that adults over 50 actually buy. Not the runway fashion, not the designer labels, just the everyday names you'd see at a mall or a department store or a Costco warehouse. And what we found was honestly a little surprising. Some of the most trusted names in American clothing have slipped in ways their loyal customers have every right to feel disappointed about. And some of the brands doing the best work for this demographic right now are not the ones getting the most attention. Only 5 brands made our recommended list. The other 8 have real problems: inconsistency, declining quality, value that no longer matches the price. And we'll be honest about all of it. But the 5 that made the cut, they earned it. And the brand at number 1 is going to raise some eyebrows. Let's start at the bottom. Number 13, Old Navy. Old Navy's promise was always simple: decent clothes at a price that doesn't hurt. And for a long time, they kept that promise. You knew exactly what you were getting. Nothing spectacular, but reliable enough that you'd go back when you needed something basic. What's changed is the consistency. One of the most common complaints from shoppers over 50 is that the sizing has become unpredictable in a way it simply wasn't before. You find a shirt you like. You go back to buy it in another color. The tag says the same size. The shirt fits differently. No explanation, no warning. Just a slightly different shirt, pretending to be the one you already loved. For people who shop by habit, who want to know what they're going to get before they get there, that kind of inconsistency makes a brand stop, feeling trustworthy. And once that trust goes, it's very hard to earn back. Number 12. Sonoma looks appealing on the rack. The colors are nice. The cuts are comfortable. And the prices suggest you're getting reasonable value. The problem is that reasonable on day 1 doesn't always mean reasonable on day 90. Colors that seemed rich when you bought them start looking faded and washed out after a handful of trips through the laundry. Fabrics that felt soft start developing that slightly rough, tired texture that tells you a garment is aging faster than it should. A sweater bought in October that starts pilling before Christmas is not a sweater that earned its price, whatever that price was. Sonoma isn't terrible. It's just a brand that consistently promises more than it delivers. And at a certain point, you learn to stop being fooled by a good-looking rack. Number 11, 8T, 9 Apt. 9 targets the business casual shopper, someone who needs to look presentable without spending serious money. And on day 1, it often succeeds. A pair of apt 9 chinos looks sharp. A button-down from this line can look perfectly professional hanging in your closet or fresh out of the dryer. The trouble is that day 1 is often when apt. 9 clothing looks its best. The fabric thins. The collar loses its structure. Buttons work themselves loose. For someone who needs an outfit for a specific occasion and doesn't plan to wear it into the ground, apt. 9 might serve the purpose. For someone building a wardrobe they want to live in for years, the math doesn't add up. Number 10, Croft and Barrow. Croft and Barrow has been a genuine staple for a lot of mature shoppers, and there was a time when that loyalty made complete sense. The sizing runs generously, which a lot of people appreciate. The styles are familiar and unfussy. The prices don't ask for too much. The problem is inconsistency, the same problem that keeps showing up on this part of the list. One flannel shirt is thick and cozy and survives 4 winters. The next one, bought the following season, feels noticeably thinner, like they switched suppliers quietly between runs. When you're building a wardrobe around basics, you want the same thing every time you buy the same thing. Croft and Barrow used to be able to promise that. It doesn't always manage it anymore. Number 9, Tommy Hilfiger. Tommy Hilfiger has a genuinely great aesthetic. The classic American look, the reds and blues. The clean prep styling still holds up, and there are Tommy Hilfiger pieces that are legitimately well made and worth what they cost. But many shoppers over 50 are starting to ask an honest question. How much of what I'm paying for is the quality? And how much is the logo? Because when you compare a Tommy Hilfiger polo shirt to some of the brands we'll discuss later, brands with a fraction of the marketing budget and none of the celebrity association, the quality gap doesn't always justify the price gap. The Tommy shirt often looks better in the store. After 10 washes, the story sometimes changes. At full retail price, sometimes isn't a good enough answer. Number 8, Chaps has built a reputation as safe, classic, easy to wear. Nothing flashy, nothing risky, nothing that's going to embarrass you. And for a certain kind of shopper, that's exactly the appeal. The issue is that Chaps exists in an awkward middle space. Not cheap enough to be a true value buy, not durable enough to justify a premium. Customers often describe buying a Chaps piece and thinking it seems fine, then wearing it for 2 seasons and noticing it's starting to look its age in a way that feels earlier than it should. Fine isn't a compliment when you've spent real money on something you expected to last. Number 7, J. Crew gets credit for something most brands in this space can't pull off, looking current without looking trendy. If you want clothes that feel modern without screaming. I just saw this on social media. J. Crew often finds that tone better than anyone. A lot of adults over 50 genuinely appreciate that. The frustration is inconsistency at a price point where inconsistency feels like a betrayal. $30 for a disappointing t-shirt is annoying. $90 for a disappointing shirt is a different feeling entirely. J. Crew shoppers increasingly report products that seem like they should be exceptional, at prices that suggest they should be, and end up being just okay, not always, but often enough that you can no longer shop there with full confidence. And for a premium brand, uncertainty is a serious problem. Number 6, Gap. This one genuinely stings because Gap holds a specific kind of sentimental territory for people in our demographic. If you were between 20 and 40 years old in the 1980s or 1990s, Gap was probably part of your wardrobe at some point. The sweatshirts, the denim, the khakis that were somehow both affordable and respectable. Gap was the brand that seemed impossible to go wrong with for a long time. Remember when a Gap sweatshirt felt like it could survive anything? When you'd buy the same style in a new color every few years, because the old one had simply earned retirement after a decade of real use? That wasn't nostalgia. That was the brand doing its job. And for a long time, it did it beautifully. Today, the experience is more complicated. Some Gap products remain excellent. Others leave customers genuinely puzzled about what happened. That unpredictability, that inability to trust the purchase before you make it, is what keeps Gap out of our top 5. It's not a bad brand. It's a brand that lost something it used to have and hasn't found a convincing way to get it back. And that's actually the bigger story on this half of the list. Tommy Hilfiger, Gap, J. Crew. These are some of the most recognized names in American casual clothing. Names that built genuine loyalty over decades. Names that many people over 50 associate with specific memories. A trip, a decade, a version of themselves they remember fondly. The fact that none of them made our recommended list isn't a small thing. It's a sign of how much the landscape has shifted and why finding brands that still deliver has become harder and more important than ever. Before we get to the 5 brands that made our list, let's acknowledge something honestly. None of the brands we just discussed is hopeless. You can still walk into a Gap or pick up a Tommy Hilfiger shirt and be genuinely happy with it. Good pieces exist across all of these companies. We're not saying never shop there. What we're saying is that none of them has maintained the thing that matters most to adults who've been shopping long enough to know what quality actually feels like. Automatic trust. The certainty that what you bring home will be worth what you paid for it. Every time. Not most of the time. Every time. The five brands coming up have earned that certainty through consistent quality, honest sizing, durable materials, and a fundamental orientation toward the person wearing the clothes rather than the person photographing them. They're not all glamorous. One of them will genuinely surprise you, but all 5 of them share one quality that has become surprisingly rare. They still keep their promise. The top 5, number 5. Columbia understood something before most of its competitors did. The person who needs clothing to actually work is often over 50. Think about what an active life in your 60s or 70s actually looks like. You're not trying to impress a room full of strangers. You're spending a morning hiking a trail with your grandchildren, and you don't want to overheat by the second mile. You're on a trip you've been planning for 2 years, maybe a cruise. maybe a tour through somewhere you've always wanted to see. And you need shirts that can survive a full day of walking, feel comfortable through dinner, and not require an iron or a second suitcase. You're spending a Saturday in the garden, or at a farmer's market, or driving somewhere beautiful just because you can, and you want to forget you're wearing anything at all. Columbia builds for that person, not the fashion show, not the trend cycle, the real, active, fully lived life that a lot of adults over 50 are genuinely living. Their moisture-wicking shirts actually work. That sounds like it should be obvious, but it isn't. A lot of brands slaps moisture-wicking on a tag and deliver something that traps heat and smells unpleasant by noon. Columbia's technical fabrics have been tested by real customers in real heat, and the reviews consistently confirm that the technology does what the label says. Their sun protection works. Their outerwear handles real weather rather than just looking like it might. What Columbia doesn't do particularly well is the dressier side of life. It's not the brand you reach for when you need something for a wedding or a nice dinner, but for everything from a comfortable travel day to a casual outdoor lunch to a morning on the water. Columbia is reliable in a way that earns its spot on this list. Number 4, Eddie Bauer. There's a kind of loyalty that advertising can't manufacture. It can only be earned slowly through years of a brand doing exactly what it said it would do. Eddie Bauer has that kind of loyalty. You can find it in a very specific place. The conversations mature shoppers have when they're specifically recommending something to a friend. Not a social media post, not a paid review. Just one person who found something good telling someone they care about where to find it. Eddie Bauer comes up in those conversations constantly, and the reason is almost always the same. Someone bought something, expected it to be decent, and discovered it was genuinely great. Then they wore it until it wore out, which often took much longer than expected. Then they went back and bought another one. That cycle, discovery, loyalty, repeat, is the whole story of Eddie Bauer for a certain kind of shopper. And it almost always starts with the flannel shirts. A good Eddie Bauer flannel at the right weight is the kind of shirt that becomes part of your routine without you quite noticing when it happened. You put it on one October morning because it's the right weight for the weather. You wear it the next week and the one after that. 3 years later, it's still in rotation, still looking like itself, still feeling exactly the way a flannel shirt is supposed to feel. The collar hasn't gone strange. The fabric hasn't thinned. It has simply done its job, season after season, the way good clothing used to do as a matter of course. Remember when a sweater could survive 10 winters? When a flannel shirt got better with every wash instead of worse? Eddie Bauer still makes those things. Quietly, without much fanfare, while the brands with bigger marketing budgets are busy reinventing themselves. For an audience that isn't you, their jackets carry the same reputation. The down-filled options are warm without being stiff or enormous. The outer shells handle wind and light rain without making you feel like you're wearing camping gear to the grocery store. And when customers report back after years of real use, The word that comes up most often isn't impressive or stylish. It's held up. After everything we've discussed on this list, that's the highest compliment. Number 3, Land's End. Land's End is the brand that gets the least credit for how consistently good it is. Possibly because it has never once tried to be interesting. They don't do limited edition drops. They don't collaborate with celebrities. They don't reinvent their identity every 2 years to chase a demographic that wasn't buying from them anyway. What they do, season after season, is make practical clothing with honest materials at prices that don't require an explanation. And the customers who discover this, particularly shoppers over 50, who have been burned enough times to genuinely appreciate consistency, tend to become deeply loyal, not the kind of excited loyalty where you tell everyone you know, the quiet kind, the kind where you simply stop looking anywhere else. Here's an experience that comes up over and over in Land's End customer stories. Someone needs a swimsuit, not because they enjoy swimsuit shopping. Nobody over 50 genuinely enjoys swimsuit shopping, but because they have a trip coming up and they've put it off as long as they can. They end up on the Land's End website because the sizing information is detailed enough to actually trust. The suit arrives. It fits the way the website said it would. It holds its shape through a week of beach and pool. It still looks right the following summer. They go back and buy another color, not because they need it, but because the first one earned it. That's the Land's End experience. It's not dramatic. There's no exciting discovery, no beating the system, no feeling like you found a hidden gem. It's just a company doing exactly what it said it would do every time, until the customer quietly decides they have no reason to look anywhere else. Their casual clothing deserves the same recognition as the swim and outdoor lines. A Land's End button-down or a pair of their chinos isn't going to make anyone turn around in a restaurant, but it will fit exactly the way the size chart said it would, wash the way good cotton washes, and still be hanging in your closet 3 years from now, looking like itself. There was a time when that was just the standard. Land's End still holds to it. Number 2, Bean. If you wanted to explain L. Bean to someone who had never heard of the brand, you could try to describe the clothing, the flannel shirts, the sweaters, the famous boots, the outerwear. But the clothing is almost secondary to what L.L. Bean really sells, which is a very specific and increasingly rare feeling, the feeling that the company is actually on your side. That sounds like the kind of thing every brand says. Most brands don't deliver it. L. Bean does. Part of it is the quality. Their chamois shirts, one of the most beloved items in the catalog, are soft when you buy them and somehow softer after 20 washes. That's not a marketing claim. It's what happens when a fabric is made correctly. A well-made L.L. Bean sweater doesn't just survive repeated wear. It settles into itself over time, becomes more comfortable with each washing, starts to feel less like something you bought and more like something that was made specifically for you. Many of us grew up with clothing like that, clothing that got better with age instead of worse. L.L. Bean still makes it. Their outerwear is the other chapter of the story. People who live in climates where winter actually means something, where you need a coat that handles real cold and real wind and real snow over and over again across multiple seasons, tend to have strong opinions about LL Bean outerwear. Those opinions are almost always positive. The famous bean boot, made essentially the same way for over 100 years, is still being bought by people who owned a previous pair and wore it until it was gone. That's not nostalgia. That's a product that works. For adults over 50, LL Bean has one more specific advantage worth mentioning. The sizing is honest. Not generous in the way that's really just vanity. Sizing with a different number on the tag, but genuinely accurate. If the website says a sweater has a 42-inch chest, it has a 42-inch chest. If it says the medium runs true to size, it runs true to size. For anyone shopping online, which more and more of us are doing, that accuracy is not a small thing. It's the difference between a purchase and a guessing game. If you have never given LL Bean a serious try, start simple. A flannel shirt, a basic sweater. Wash it a few times and notice what happens. That experience will tell you more about the brand than anything I can say here. Number 1. Kirkland Signature. Before I tell you the number 1 brand on today's list, I want to be honest about something. If someone had told me 10 years ago that a warehouse store's house brand would outrank Gap, Tommy Hilfiger, J.Crew, and almost every other well-known name in American casual clothing for adults over 50, I would have been skeptical. Those brands have heritage. They have history. They have decades of earned loyalty. Kirkland Signature has bulk packaging and a Costco membership requirement. And yet, here we are. Because what keeps happening, what customers report again and again, in numbers that are hard to ignore, is this. Someone goes to Costco for the practical things: olive oil, paper towels, the giant container of mixed nuts they'll be eating for 6 weeks. And on the way out, they walk past a folded stack of Kirkland merino wool sweaters. They're skeptical. They pick one up anyway. The price is low enough that the risk feels manageable. They bring it home. They wash it. They wear it. And they discover that the merino wool is genuinely good merino wool. Soft, warm, doesn't itch, doesn't pill, keeps its shape wash after wash. It is, by any honest measure, a better sweater than things they've paid twice as much for, from brands they've trusted for years. So they go back for another color. They tell their spouse, who buys one. They mentioned it to a friend at lunch. That friend goes to Costco and comes back converted. The story spreads, not through advertising, not through influencers, not through a single coordinated campaign, but the old-fashioned way. One satisfied person telling another. This is what Kirkland Signature has quietly built for itself in the clothing category. Not excitement, not fashion, not the kind of brand loyalty that comes from marketing. The kind that comes from delivering on a promise so consistently that people stop being surprised and start simply expecting it. The merino sweaters are the flagship of the clothing line, but the story doesn't stop there. The dress shirts have impressed customers who walked in expecting mediocrity. The base layers perform genuinely well for cold weather wear, competing with brands that charge significantly more for the same function. The casual pants offer a fit and fabric quality that holds up in ways that make the price feel almost embarrassing by comparison. Now, and this matters, Kirkland is not the answer to every wardrobe question. The selection varies by season and isn't always predictable. You can't necessarily walk in expecting a specific item to be in stock. The styles are straightforward rather than interesting. Nobody is going to wear Kirkland to make a fashion statement. And the experience of shopping at Costco, the warehouse scale, the pallets, the fellow shoppers with enormous carts, is not exactly a boutique. But here is what Kirkland Signature offers, that the brands with the famous names and the full-page ads have slowly, quietly stopped offering: honesty. The clothing is what it says it is. It costs what it should cost. It lasts as long as it should last. And in a landscape where so many established brands have drifted away from those simple standards, that honesty has become worth more than most people would have predicted. That is why it takes the #1 spot, not because it's glamorous, not because it's surprising, though it is, but because in a ranking built entirely around which brands still actually keep their promise, Kirkland Signature keeps it better than anyone else on this list. So here's what I want to leave you with. Every brand on this list, even the ones we ranked at the bottom, built their reputation by doing something right. Old Navy made basics affordable. Gap made casual feel trustworthy. Tommy Hilfiger made American style feel effortless. These companies earned real loyalty from real people who had good reasons to give it. But trust is not permanent. It has to be maintained, re-earned, purchase after purchase, through every shirt that comes out of the wash, looking like itself, and every pair of pants that fits the same way the 10th time as it did the first. The brands that treat that trust as something they've already secured, something they can spend down slowly while cutting corners elsewhere, eventually discover that their customers noticed. And those customers, once lost, are very hard to win back. The 5 brands that made our list haven't done everything right. They've had off seasons. They've disappointed loyal customers at moments. But through it all, they've kept returning to the same fundamental orientation. The clothes are for the person wearing them, not for the photographer, not for the trend report, not for the quarterly earnings call, for the person who puts them on in the morning and needs them to be what they're supposed to be. Many of us grew up believing that was just the baseline. That clothing was supposed to hold up, supposed to fit honestly, supposed to earn its place in the closet by doing its job year after year. Some brands still believe that. They're just not always the ones with the biggest names or the brightest signs. Columbia, Eddie Bauer, Land's End, LL Bean, Kirkland Signature. 5 names. Write them down if you want to. Or don't. But next time you're standing in front of a rack, trying to decide whether something is actually worth what they're asking for it, remember the question that really matters. Does this brand still keep its promise? The ones on this list do now. Tell us where you land. Which brand surprised you most? Which one do you think deserved better or worse than where we put it? And what clothing brand has earned the kind of loyalty from you that you used to give automatically, back when that felt like a safe bet? We read every comment, and the conversations down there are genuinely some of the best parts of doing this. If this was useful, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.